difficult, but definitely not impossible, right? It's StarCraft 2, so there's not that many maps that really go into it. And yeah, we're in the game. Let's see what ends up happening here. In the bottom left-hand side, it is for Berserk Esports, ShaDoWn.
In the top right, as the blue Protoss for Team Rotti, he is Goblin. I wonder how many people look at Team Rotti and they're like, isn't Roti spelled with one T? And then they wonder how in the world, like, bread comes to be a phoenix.
Roti. They think like that Roti spelled with one T?
Like an Indian bread, isn't it? Roti?
Oh, I don't know.
It's a flatbread. Yeah. I only said it because I did have it 2 days ago. So.
Bread is so good. Yeah.
I know. Oh yeah, I'm speaking to the person who can't have bread right now. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like basically like, you know, you like when I quit cigarettes and I started like watching TV, all of a sudden I noticed like the smoker in every single show, you know, and I'm like, oh my god. And now I'm similar but with bread, and it's harder to avoid like looking at carbs. I'm feeling like, oh my god, I want carbs because everyone talks about it. Everyone has them all the time.
Yes, that is very true. Very carb based. I was gonna say society, but it's really just humans. Humans are very carb based. It's very easy to grow and store, I think is most important about it. Storing. It's very easy. So yeah, sorry mate.
That's okay.
Gonna be bombarded all the time.
It's unescapable.
I had a similar experience. We got a PvP, so we're paying attention to who's putting down pylons where and what stalkers come out where. And it is 2 stalker openings, so this could get aggressive very, very soon. But I had a similar experience, kind of like a family emergency, and then not being able to eat like a lot of unhealthy foods. And then my dad was like, well, now you know how I feel all the time, because my dad's a really strict vegan. Like he doesn't even eat honey. And it's just like a commercial after commercial of all like the fast food, right?
Yeah.
Or even like the delivery services are all with meat. So
yeah, but a little bit of suffering is always, you know, welcome, so that we can appreciate it. Again, like when I have like my Taco Bell, it's gonna be the best in the world. We do have now was that 2 sentries on one side and just 1 on the other, huh?
Yeah. Very, very small difference. And I'm actually not sure why ShaDoWn was a little bit later to the 2nd century. It did seem, I'm going to guess it's because he wasn't sure he wanted to get 2 sentries, right? He wanted to see what his opponent was doing, so that if it was suddenly something aggressive, like the stalkers are moving out very aggressively perhaps, then he could build a 3rd stalker as opposed to a 2nd century. That's my guess, as they are both doing actually identical build orders. Until this. Okay, we finally have a difference. Rather than just time, we do have a actual difference of stalker versus 3rd century.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And yeah, I'm impressed that you were like, yeah, ShaDoWn hasn't started his 2nd century and then he starts it. So you kind of like anticipated that there would be a 2nd century for sure. I guess you kind of just need units at this stage. And yeah, I mean, it kind of hurts him a little bit, right? Not to get it earlier because of the energy, and he definitely had the money. So I was looking for it.
Goblin's gonna see this.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's very interesting. There's really no indication currently, so Goblin is just now getting a 2nd hallucination, that ShaDoWn was up to no good. There really wasn't anything as far as I could see. So yeah, that's So I guess maybe he knows that ShaDoWn is going to plan something, or he recently faced a Protoss, on ladder who did something like this. So he didn't just go for a very like typical 1 hallucination scout that goes to the main, and then if you are like, oh, that's a little suspicious, let me send out another one, you might do it. He just right off the bat sent out 2, and one of them was to go see what was around the corner. So that's interesting.
Yeah, important to note, obviously, that could have been any sort of proxy that he was scouting for. So, like, maybe just scouting for proxies in general. Could have been a Stargate or a Robo as well over there. So, but still, yeah, he probably played ShaDoWn, or he's just worried about Robos, because he hasn't been on the other side of the map, so he hasn't really scouted anything but the first 2 stalkers.
Yeah. And I don't even think he scouted like the later 3rd pylon, I want to say, that usually goes around the Nexus, which like now he scouted because there was a hallucination. But again, before, I don't think he did. So it really was, and to your point, didn't even have to be a proxy building. It just could have been a proxy pylon, because when ShaDoWn moved out aggressively with the Stalkers, again, Goblin's not sure exactly what follows up behind that. Even a slow warp-in of a couple of additional Stalkers can surprise people in this matchup, because there are times where you're just kind of trying to stop building units in favor of some technology. So that's usually what a proxy slow warp-in is trying to take advantage of. So, I mean, it's very safe. And it seems almost unimportant at this stage, because we have moved on. We're getting into third Nexus for both parties.
Yeah, for sure. But just closing thoughts on that, I really like the Scout, just simply because now that I'm trying to recall to PvPs in recent history, as these two Adepts are going to die, there's pretty much always a proxy on one side, it feels like. I think more often than not, at least, there's some sort of proxy, even like you said, if it's just a pylon.
Yeah, true that, true that. Pretty quick into charge as well. We don't even really have anyone truly poking around that third base, which sometimes can happen. Again, going off the idea that maybe your opponent skips 2 Stalkers or slower to build them than you. You catch them by surprise, you slap in a couple of force fields, boom, suddenly you got something going. Doesn't even try that. And this is definitely not the aggressive PvP that I was expecting, especially from Goblin. I was absolutely expecting him to maybe do something like a proxy pylon. I guess ShaDoWn did try with a Dark Templar, but it just didn't work out. So kind of like, bringing a knife to a gunfight, and then you just hold your hands up and you're like, no, man, it was just a prank. It was just a prank. Like, whatever, man. Let's be cool. Let's be cool. And now they get a macro PvP.
Yeah, and for sure, I mean, Goblin hasn't been particularly tricky. It's ShaDoWn that tried to be somewhat tricky with the Dark Shrine, and I think maybe it's just Goblin playing without pressure, right? Like maybe not trying to prepare anything super fancy, but rather just seeing what his game can do at this stage and get his practice in, because again, it's kind of difficult for you as Goblin to set up your mind to be like, all right, I'm still gonna make it out of these groups. Like right now, it's kind of unrealistic for him, so just kind of chill, see what happens, and if you get a couple of victories under your belt, maybe start reconsidering.
I do wonder if that is his approach. Absolutely, it could be. The other approach could be at least acknowledging that it's still somewhat in your hands, right? Like, it is 50-50. He needs to win, but then he also needs other people to lose in a very precise manner, and then trying, to really try at that point too. And we always have to mention this because it is it's a decent amount of cash, and that's kind of overstating a little bit. Like, it's a good amount of cash for what is usually about an hour. It's 200 bucks if you win a best of 3. Sure. So definitely worth fighting for.
Definitely worth fighting for. Yeah, I don't think he's not gonna try. Definitely, just maybe maybe I think like maybe not as much preparation as he would have put. Like maybe just his default standing is what he would most likely go for. But yeah, I mean, who knows? It's really up to him and how much he values this win. So let's see.
And how much I think he puts weight on the idea of, if I'm calm, if I'm chill, I'm going to perform better anyways.
Exactly, yeah, like, because that is a thing too, right? So yeah, a lot of players, I think, perform better with less pressure, and it can be an opportunity to just be like, YOLO, let's see what happens, and try a different approach.
Very non-YOLO so far, though, from Goblin. He has been absolutely the tried and true.
Yeah.
Just, defending, scouting, and expanding. So does anyone grab that advantage, right? And the answer is yes, I would say. ShaDoWn currently has a decent chance to actually just bulldoze through. His upgrades finishing, he has 4 Archons to 0. That's the biggest difference, even though the supply kind of is like making people ask why is Zombie Grip crazy. The supply is in 10 more Zealots and 4 DTs that have not shown themselves yet for Goblin, which, they're going to be used harassment-wise, which if they're used correctly, if they buy even 30 seconds, then ShaDoWn having 4 Archons is, maybe not going to be enough. But that is currently the biggest difference. Oh, the Warp Prism actually just gets shot down, so ShaDoWn should absolutely pull the trigger.
Yeah, that was with 3 DTs as well. And yeah, the Disruptor tech is on the way for Goblin, so that is kind of like where he will kind of swing back in terms of momentum. But right now, ShaDoWn has all the cards. So we see that Goblin has been posturing forward, kind of just making sure that ShaDoWn stays on his side. But ShaDoWn has maybe had enough of it. And I mean, if he evaluates both armies in the same way that you have, I think he should be looking for an engagement. This is smart from Goblin, exposing only the Stalkers so that he gets some chip damage onto the melee units as they advance. Kind of just tax their advancement, and now ShaDoWn is at least going to lose a little bit of HP before getting into a good position. But still looking very scary for Gobs.
This is super scary. His Zealots really can't go up against the Meat Grinder that are 4 Archons, 5 at this point. So he's going to try and go for a bit of a surround. He already finds one of the Archons, just, I guess, a bit late to the party. He also maybe could grab the War Prism. Is he actually going to look for it? Kind of, yeah, and he grabs it. And that is a huge, huge deal. ShaDoWn might have to evacuate from this. The Stalkers on the front line. The Archons are not. That's exactly what you don't want to have happen as ShaDoWn. There's just so many Zealots left over. Maybe the Archons won't be enough. And Goblin now has his Disruptors, something that was going to eventually be his trump card. But the timing was almost not going to work out for Goblin. It seems like he has survived. And without that War Prism, I don't know how much more ShaDoWn can push.
Yeah, if we look at resources lost, it's pretty darn even. A little bit in the favor of ShaDoWn. ShaDoWn had some really good moves. It's just like you said, killing that War Prism is huge, right? Because then you're working against time, against those War Pins that will tax you over time. And now on the retreat is ShaDoWn. He still does have the 1 Archon, no more, as it gets focus fired. And now ShaDoWn has to chill, I think. The Disruptors are out. Those are scary against Stalkers.
Well, now ShaDoWn is in a really difficult position, because as much as that was his favor because of those Archons, if it didn't work, if he didn't kill Goblin or do a significant amount of damage, he is the one tremendously behind in that technology, a very important technology too. He did not start off a second Robo or Robo Bay. Even his +3 was a little bit later. It was really quite all in that idea, even though he's on 4 bases. So, you know, he's trying to still make it work, hoping that maybe the low Disruptor count will not cover Goblin. But every second that passes that he doesn't grab a Disruptor, he's one more Disruptor on the field, but he's going to go for all of them. And unfortunately, Goblin, that was a moment to just shoot all of them out. And I think he was so surprised that ShaDoWn actually made that move. Only 2 were shot out, and the rest just died.
Yeah, but I think ShaDoWn was looking for a move like that, and now he is in a dominant position. As on site, he just has way more Stalkers. It's 29 to 13 right here, so it's going to be very difficult for Goblin to hold. He's going to try with Zealots, which fair enough. I mean, they're going to trade effectively if the Stalkers don't move, but ShaDoWn has been really good at trading from a little bit of a distance. So ShaDoWn finding himself an opening that he shouldn't have found. The Disruptors just kind of on their own without the army to shield them, and he pounces on the opportunity.
Yeah, it was a very dangerous game Goblin was playing, clearly wanting to catch ShaDoWn off guard. But 1, not really having as much vision. A lot of his observers have been shot down, but then 2, not really having enough Disruptors to truly handle themselves. Now, this is a little awkward as once again, the War Prism is shot down. The Stalkers can't take on a huge swell of Zealots either. They need that Archon to support, and the Disruptors are still looking for a great shot, and they find a pretty damn decent one once again. Goblin holds.
That is crazy. He's going to stabilize. This DT, I think, has been there since the War Prism left him. That is amazing. But yeah, I mean, Goblin holding again puts him in a position where he does have the Disruptor tech a little bit earlier than ShaDoWn, so he can definitely look to restabilize here. That looked like ShaDoWn might be able to close out the game, and I'd be curious to re-watch that in the replay at some point and just figure out why he wasn't able to close it. It seemed like he had so much more, but once again, I think it was the War Prism, right, Jess?
Yeah, I think so. I do wonder, because there was getting a little bit of a weird compositional dynamic, right? Where a surplus of Stalkers does really well against a low number of Zealots, so does well enough, I suppose. But if they do get enough Zealots, and if your back is up against a wall, then it gets a little more awkward. So there was also that to consider in that fight. So maybe be able to take another look at it with Juniper Network replay, but we'll get there when we get there. We are in Ganver 1, and it is still... To say it's even is a bit inaccurate because ShaDoWn is still very behind technology-wise, but we are getting a PvP where just a surplus of units, rather, is trying to beat out the high technology, high-quality Disruptors, and sometimes the quantity does win out.
Yeah, and this is important here, because ShaDoWn's actually going to spot this base for the first time. Shield Battery Overcharge used right away, but the base is actually going to go down. And that is a really cool move from ShaDoWn. And now that he knows of the intention of Goblin to take that base, and he is taking his 5th base, he is working with 2 different advantages. In that before, it was just like trying to bulldoze through. Now he at least has an economic lead, so he can maybe play for that. And Disruptors are not very good at being in all places at once. They usually want to be kind of bunched up with the army. So here's where ShaDoWn can split his army 50-50, or just poke from one side and the other and try to test where the Disruptors are not.
We are getting to a count of 9 Disruptors, so there is something to be said about eventually being able to split them, you know, as long as you have maybe some stack defense to help them, or, you know, more of the army to help them. Oh, but now we get to talk about ShaDoWn's DTs, something that he had invested into a couple of minutes ago. They did not last super long, but 12 probes, a big distraction, not bad. Oh, and scouting a little bit too.
Yeah, so again, he's gonna pounce on the opportunity with that scout to deny the Nexus. And now if we look at income and if we look at the probe count, it's significantly in favor of ShaDoWn. So it is difficult for Goblin still to move out onto the other side of the map, because if he does, ShaDoWn can just start a base race, and he actually has more units that will build things. You gotta be careful! Oh my god! Good split there from ShaDoWn, actually. Those units would have otherwise died on the right-hand side. He evacuates a lot of them. And now Goblin is trying to push him back. Here's where ShaDoWn, I think, just needs to go on the side of the map and try to look for avenues to counterattack. I don't like defending here.
Yeah, you don't really want to defend against that many disruptors, man. You're just going to be pinned to a corner, to a wall, to your own SimCity, and you're going to die. There's nothing to do in return if Goblin just does this. And with 9 disruptors, that's going to be endless disruptor shots. There's actually no gap in time where ShaDoWn can pounce like it was maybe when there was 3 or 4 disruptors. So that Nexus is a goner. I mean, ShaDoWn's threatening a pounce, but even the non-disruptor armies, right, are kind of even between the two. But there's the DT run by, killing more probes. I guess both of them now at this point losing probes, and a very aggressive blink forward from ShaDoWn. Again, something that he's not technically supposed to be doing here. Does get punished. He just lost a couple of stalkers. He's starting to lose control of the situation, but he does have his own disruptors now, finally. So we're back to that point where disruptors make everything almost fair game. You know, you can take a terrible disruptor shot. I can take a terrible disruptor shot.
Yeah, 100%. And now Mortals added into the mix as well, which is going to help a lot against those stalkers. But yeah, I really will stand by that. I think that in that moment where you're in the middle of the map as ShaDoWn and you identify that Goblin is pushing into you, you just gotta escape to the side and move towards your opponent, because, I mean, that was just a terrible trade, right? Like, the army was there threatening to pounce, but it could never pounce. Like you mentioned, there was always going to be a disruptor shot available to prevent that, and so the army was just there kind of like dying, and a lot of probes die and your base dies anyway. And now he's further with his back trapped against the wall, trying to defend bases that really he can't, as a zealot flank might make it somewhat possible. Plausible at least, and Goblin's not gonna want to engage. First disruptor as well, first ShaDoWn will pop up, and the base will somehow survive.
Yeah, that was actually really close, but very nicely done for ShaDoWn to be patient on the second army to the right side. He had a disruptor, he had 5 zealots, but he knew that they were just going to get picked off. So he waited and waited until the very last second. So very good crisis management from ShaDoWn. Unfortunately, the disruptor count for him is just still too low. You know, and the one shot that he had towards the beginning of that fight was used on, I guess, the DT, so it already started off poorly. Now we are again in a very poor situation. The red Protoss. Okay, that might just be it.
No chance, Jose.
Yeah, that's gonna be it. ShaDoWn, I do think that at the end of the day, his major problem was waiting too long to transition into those disruptors. GG, Goblin takes game 1. But yeah, the disruptor transition took a very long time. It seemed that ShaDoWn was, you know, fairly convinced that he would be able to win the game. And for, let's say, the first attack, obviously that was his intention, do the attack without disruptors. Yes, there, and then maybe 3 minutes beyond that, okay, yes, I see why you can't get the disruptors, but it felt like he really did spend as long as possible not transitioning. And I think that ultimately did kill him. Imagine 45 seconds, 60 seconds earlier on the disruptor production, he has 4 ready for his 5th base being under attack. Then he has 6 ready for his other 5th base being under attack, right? Like, it's a huge difference, but he did spend too long trying to end the game when he really, you know, he couldn't, obviously. He didn't actually win the game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when he pounced onto those 4 disruptors, I felt like there was an opportunity, but I think the important thing, like you mentioned twice, is the war person getting picked off, right? If it wasn't for that, I feel like he had a good chance to end the game, and he found himself in a similar position as he did in very many games against Ratata yesterday, where he actually just got trapped into that mid game, just trying to end his opponent. Only Ratata was right up there with him, and Goblin was trying to transition. So Goblin just hangs on a few times there to really stabilize and take it away. But at the same time, I still think ShaDoWn was working with different advantages that he could have made work even with lower tech, but not maybe playing them to their full potential.
Yeah, perhaps not. And I think always, you pointed it out, once the non-disruptor player is on the back foot, that's going to be a dramatic shift in momentum very, very quickly. So that was also one of the there was a tightrope being walked, even when ShaDoWn looked like he had a lot of potential because he had 20 more supply, a more mobile army, and was picking off Nexus and harassing with DTs. It all looked really good, but in the back of your mind, one, no disruptors, two, if Goblin does push you, what is your response then? And yeah, perhaps a base trade would have been a better response.
I really think so. But he's going to have to reset for ShaDoWn. It's very important that he wins the series. So maps are going to be kind of whatever. You can drop one, my boy. But this guy is looking for a 2-0, and he really wants it. In the top left-hand side, it is for Team Roddy, Goblin.
In the bottom right is the red Protoss. He is ShaDoWn. And I guess we should mention that game kind of started with an attempted proxy Dark Shrine, and it was a failure. Did have to be canceled. Pylon was killed. Really didn't impact the game all that much. They both just continued on with their lives, and ShaDoWn even tried to take a faster third kind of behind it, but ShaDoWn clearly had a plan for the first game. It did not get to really play out. And his second plan was also a good one. Again, effectively low-tech all-inning, I guess the way I put that. Yeah. And that also, it really looked like it could have worked out, but it did not. So I wonder if ShaDoWn's going to try and do something again that's kind of tricky in the early game. Hope that this time around it does get to play out. Or if he concedes that Goblin's going to be too airtight, too foolproof, and just play macro.
Yeah, I mean, Goblin with a major blunder also to give ShaDoWn a chance there, because ShaDoWn was posturing and he had, like you mentioned in the game, like more stalkers than Goblin, but obviously no disruptors. And when there was 4 disruptors on the side of Goblin, before they get caught even, ShaDoWn was baiting shots, and at some points there was like 2 shots used at a time. So I was hoping to see ShaDoWn try to pounce when there's 2 shots on cooldown, and the third one gets shot, right? Then you shut down that disruptor, the fourth like kind of like desperation shot goes out, and then you have time to kill the fourth disruptor, and you can take a fight maybe. But then Goblin made it a lot easier because you never had to go for any of those openings. The disruptors were just exposed by themselves. And I think that then ShaDoWn had all the cards in his hand again, just unable to close it out.
Goblin is opening up again very safe. Well, I guess safe as in initially safe against more attack units. Then you follow up with the actual scouting units, they're also very safe. It's really just a question of Stalker Sentry first, or Stalker then Sentry Sentry. That is currently the difference between the two. And I think technically it's a bit better to do what ShaDoWn is doing. It's actually, I guess it's arguable, but he's ahead 1 probe, so you know.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, because the Sentry is a little bit cheaper than the Stalker, it also allows for his Nexus to be a little bit sooner and his Hallucination to be a little bit sooner as well, because it gathers energy faster. But I guess the risk would have been something like 4 Stalker opening or something on the side of Goblin, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, even Adepts coming across the map can try and target down the Sentry if it's not blocked, right? But only if it's not blocked. But yeah, Proxy, Pylon again with slow warp-ins would have been troublesome, something like that. But it is, again, a macro game. Both of them getting Nexus, both of them getting Twilight Council. Goblin did try his best to find the hidden second Pylon, did not find it because ShaDoWn put it around his probably 4th. But as time goes on, as the hallucination gets into the main, he's going to know that it really wasn't anything suspicious.
Definitely. Interesting philosophies as well in terms of like the first pylon on the high ground and just where you want that shield battery post on the natural base. So ShaDoWn has it more tucked in, Goblin has it more exposed, and you know, you can have it a little bit more tucked in, but you need that pylon on the high ground, which Goblin has no access to just because of how his wall on the high ground looks like. So little differences that different players adopt here and there, and I'm not quite sure on all the pros and cons of those, but yeah.
Well, the 2 Adepts kind of warped in here is kind of cute from ShaDoWn. I'm going to focus on that for a second. It's not going to get into the main base, and it's not really worth going to the natural at this point. You tuck them away for later, about maybe a minute from now, and they will be very likely to get a surprise couple of probes. But It was a decision from ShaDoWn that you warp in a couple of extra units that aren't going to add a lot of quality to your army as the game goes on. Another accidental probe hallucination, by the way, because I'm pretty sure we saw one yesterday. Is he gonna scout? I mean, he's gonna scout with them, but
he's gonna scout everywhere with them actually, because you get 4 probes per hallucination. I kind of as I see it, I kind of like it. Yeah.
Actually, I really like it. It's gonna literally scout something. So proxy pylon this late into the game. It could technically only be for annoying adept warp-ins, but you would never just assume that. Like, oh, just a couple of adepts, no need to worry. ShaDoWn should absolutely go back and check. Is that a proxy gateway? And I guess his adepts are on the job right now?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I think you go clear the pylon at the very least regardless. So
there we go.
This is going to be very nice for ShaDoWn. That was really cool, actually. I think that's the kind of thing that, like I see this for the first time. But I expect we'll increasingly see it more and more, and then, we will just take it for granted and be like, oh, like, why didn't he just hallucinate the probes here in this situation? So props to ShaDoWn. Yeah, mark the date, I guess.
Well, I think we saw it yesterday or the day before of the probe hallucination, but I could have sworn it was a mistake. It was like prior to a battle, which, I mean, technically probes, hallucinated probes without being detected would still soak up some shots, I guess. So maybe that wasn't accidental either.
That. Yeah, I mean, maybe, but this one had a very, very focused use. Really cool blink, by the way, to trap those adepts on the other side by Goblin.
Cool. Do you know what the hotkey is for the probes from hallucination?
No, I always make the same stuff with hallucination. But I have everyone makes Phoenix. I like to make oracles just because they have very similar speed, and they, if you see an oracle, you kind of have to react more than if you see a Phoenix. But everyone else just makes Phoenix, and some people make War Prisms sometimes.
Yep.
And those are cool too.
Yeah, I don't know if it's E. It might actually be P. Old school. Anyways, very important. Clearly, that was on purpose, and it was very good that it was on purpose because it did just stop an attempted attack in its tracks. Goblin might still do the attack, but it's not going to be the same one. And actually, ShaDoWn is currently setting up for what looks to be a +1 attack. He is getting the War Prism, timing out with the +1 and Templar Archive, so you can add in 3 Archons, I want to say. You can really fit in 3 Archons, and then just a whole lot of charge lots. So Goblin kind of needs to identify this, and with a hallucination getting through everywhere, I think if you saw the War Prism especially pop out with Templar Archives, you know the army's on the way, but I think he's already suspicious as that 4th base might just be an easy peasy cancel. Like, you don't necessarily have to have a 4th base up against this. But Goblin needs to make sure that he has his shield batteries prepared around his 3rd, more importantly.
Yeah, for sure. Both players working on relatively low gas. That's interesting how both players are taking the gas first, like 1 gas at the 3rd and 1 gas at the natural base. I'm not sure what that's about. Haven't really thought of the advantages of that, but it seems to be, if they're both replicating it, there must be something to it.
Cool. I talked about the 3rd base, but it's actually going to be hitting the natural. There's a shield battery there as well, but, if you actually got the jump on the opponent, they're still on the low ground, you're on their high ground, that would have been excellent. Good thing for Goblin, he had very consistent hallucinated Phoenix, so he knows to respond. Still kind of cut off, though. Still very awkwardly investing into future technology that's not necessarily going to help him right now, right? So a little similar to last game. It's not disruptors that he's waiting for. It's that +2. It's that Dark Shrine. Can he hold on until he actually gets there? I don't know. The shield battery's already busted. ShaDoWn is in his natural. The time the shield battery goes down, the War Prism stays up. It's like the reverse of last game, and it does look like Goblin is going to be broken.
It does look like it. DTs will eventually clean this up, but it's going to be too much damage that he takes, I think. But he has been scouting like crazy with his observers. He has 2 observers on site, so he definitely knows that ShaDoWn has no observer, no way to push back the DTs. But too much damage has been taken. 19 probes on a Nexus is not acceptable at that point. And so ShaDoWn will even the series up.
Like I said, I feel like Goblin was, he knew that there was a possibility that was going to come. He didn't scout it until the very last second, like 100%, seeing the army close to your natural with the War Prism. That's the 100%. But he still was able to see it in time to position his army. I guess being split was just not really the answer. So maybe choosing one or the other would have been better, putting him in the natural, putting him in the 3rd. It just was a very, very last second decision that he had to make. Imagine his hallucination sees the War Prism kind of across the map, on ShaDoWn's third. I think he's able to situate a lot better, and it's a much closer fight. Even though Goblin had a couple of things that weren't helping him in the fight, sure, yeah. But I still think it would have been much closer if he had his blob against the, ShaDoWn's blob.
Yeah, it's so difficult. And ShaDoWn picked a really good position to make that attack happen as well, because it is the position where you're not gonna have any shield batteries in the high ground itself, so you have to attack your army, like you said, either to the natural or the third, or kind of like split it. And splitting it sometimes is just easier to not lose units on the retreat, because you can split to either side as wherever side the units are a little bit closer to. And from that position it's just so difficult, because your opponent can basically decide if they go into the natural or into the third first, and they can pounce onto half of your army first. So if you were already at a unit disadvantage, that just doesn't help the case.
Yeah, very right about that. I also think that a few more shield batteries would have been warranted if Goblin knew 100% what was going on about 30 seconds in advance.
Yeah.
So I do think it was still a late acknowledgement of what was going on, in an already very precarious situation for Goblin to defend it. So it was ultimately a very easy game number 2 for ShaDoWn. So we head into game 3. In the bottom left of 2,000 atmospheres, we have Goblin.
And in the top right-hand side, it is ShaDoWn.
So I think what we are seeing between the two is, attempts at aggression. ShaDoWn went for the proxy hidden Dark Templars in the first game. Goblin was going to go for an earlier attack with the proxy gateway to bust the third base. Those both got scouted, and they just said, oh, okay, never mind. Pretend he didn't see anything. But then the common thread here is that ShaDoWn is hitting these timing attacks, right? Goblin is the one that's playing defensively, trying to get some higher technology, trying to just get the leads in the macro sense. And in the first game, it worked out, but then you could really argue that it only barely worked out. I think in general, we can say that Goblin needs to be very wary of timing attacks, because he was very close to losing the first game, lost the second game. What does that mean exactly? Not much. I mean, he's doing a lot of scouting. There's definitely no fault there. We're seeing constant hallucinations from Goblin. But perhaps he should also play to a timing idea. It is not uncommon in PvP to see both of them try and hit that +1, or both of them try and hit that +2. And it's a matter of who positions around who, right? That might be kind of a safer way to play, even though the downside would be that if your opponent isn't doing that attack and you're just kind of doing it just because they are, right? You would fall behind in the macro sense. So it's not an easy answer here for Goblin. It's just something that it's we picked up on it. It's going to be scary for Goblin if once again ShaDoWn does a +1 or +2, attack there.
Somewhat uncharacteristically for this level of play, one probe died. The scouting probe ShaDoWn died early there. And another thing that I like to note is Goblin is kind of just slouching in his chair and like with his head tilted to the side. So I think he's a little deflated, like just knowing that like a lot of his chances to advance at least have diminished going into this game. Whereas ShaDoWn's still very, very much attentive to what's going on in the screen, like tilted forward, right? So it's it's a little sad to see. See, oh, he's gonna sit up straight. Oh, little science sits up straight. All right, he's gonna.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that assessment. It does look like he's literally deflated, even if he does sit up and get paying attention again. I think at some point too, as we watch Goblin lose the Stalker battle, I think at some point, even if you think you're gonna lose from the get-go, from the middle, whenever, at some point, all of us who play StarCraft 2, too much basically, at some point it is just about winning. You know what I mean? Like you're like, I'm not gonna advance, this sucks, like it's game 3, whatever. And then the micro gets started, the oracles come in, the shield batteries have to be put down, you get kind of into that habit, and it just becomes about winning the game. And you're just like, you know what, no, F it, I'm gonna win this game, like screw you.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I think, the moment that we just witnessed from Goblin. He recognizes maybe his chances aren't great, but he's still playing for money, he's still playing for pride, there's still a lot of people watching, he still wants to put on a good show. And yeah, I think we're gonna have exactly that. So it's still a very even game. 25 workers for Goblin to 30 of ShaDoWn. However, I'm not sure how or why that happened.
Yeah, he just went for Stargate, I think, right? Pretty fast. Actually, ShaDoWn went for a pretty fast robo. It looks like he was certain that Goblin was doing something because he had a decent amount of stalkers, not just the first 2 and then nothing else, but 2 and then a third. And he also lost a stalker, which is, they traded out, I suppose. Anywho, but what Goblin was doing was not a frontal attack. It was covering for a Stargate. Usually a lot of stalkers don't come before the Stargate. It's usually a depth or something like that. But the Robo, while it does look sometimes useless in a game like this, I don't ever want to accuse the Robo of being useless. It just, with the current state of PvP, it is so much better to get that faster blink if it really is going to be a normal game, and then push off that Robo as long as possible.
It does feel that way, or at least most players seem to go that route. As Goblin's going to continue to apply pressure. There was a breaking point where he maybe could have made something happen. He recognized that and brought the Oracle back. And that forced the shield battery overcharge. So at least that's a little bit less energy that ShaDoWn has to work with in terms of, just chrono boosting or, well, Rico's unlikely, but yeah, chrono boosting primarily. But it's not enough, really, to catch him back up. He's still lagging those 4 to 5 workers at any given point in time, and the Oracles really haven't found too much damage. Still, the potential that they have just by sheer virtue of being alive is always going to be there and going to make it difficult for ShaDoWn to move out anytime soon. And Goblin recognizing that is going to take a third.
Exactly why this is a very safe thing for Goblin to do, and why ShaDoWn really wanted to know about it as well. So he not only has to consider the threat of the Oracles, he also has to consider, could there be like a 2-base attack attached with it? Could there be a proxy gateway somewhere? Because we've been trying to do those things and it hasn't worked out so far. So once his observer saw a 3rd Nexus, it was the green light to take a 3rd Nexus. Oracles aren't going to kill a Nexus. They're going to kill probes if you're out of position, if you're under attack elsewhere. But if it really is not going to be a forward attack, something with a lot of gateway units, ShaDoWn can also get his 3rd. So he's unfortunately for Goblin kind of still 1 step ahead because of that probe count, right? The Oracles were really supposed to get at least 4 or 5 probes just here and there, right? And then maybe, hopefully a ShaDoWn overreaction much later 3rd Nexus, and they haven't done any of that. So Goblin is still the one that is trying to catch up. His 20-second faster blink is not going to help him out all that much. And we actually have ShaDoWn. He's going for very fast Templar Archives this time around. His blink isn't even done. That's super fast.
It is super fast, and it's going to line up nicely to kind of counter any potential charge tech that Goblin wants to go for if he really commits to those sellouts heavily, and then you have Archons to answer already. It could get kind of nasty for Goblin. I love everything that you pointed out there. I am completely with you. I think that just ShaDoWn being able to drop the 3rd right behind Goblins by sheer virtue of scouting and like just making sure, okay, like, did you take a 3rd or are you all-inning me? Was a very prompt scouting. He really got that information as soon as possible, and he will, in that regard, extend his lead. Though Goblin has kind of caught up as well, but now the concerning problem is going to be the Archon follow-up here versus potential charge Blood.
Yeah, I'm still a little surprised at the faster High Templars. Checking on ShaDoWn's full scouting, which isn't quite full, but he did see a lot of gateways. It is certainly possible. Oh, and he saw like no gases at the natural too. I could definitely see him thinking that this was a fast charge attack, and then Archons would have been, almost a hard counter if you can get 2 of them and the shield battery behind them, right? Yeah. But even though it's not that build, and this hallucination gets back in to see that, yes, in fact, a Forge was added, that's more of a sign towards the future, right? Upgrades. It's not like getting an Archon or Templar Archives is necessarily bad if you can afford it. And since nothing has happened in this game, they both got the 3rd Nexus, you can afford it. The additional gases taken for those Archons is something to consider as far as who's winning out in the mineral battle, right? But Archons are such powerful units that obviously you still want them. He even kept some in High Templars, by the way, so that he could feed back the Oracles if they swooped in.
Yeah, a very aggressive blink forward here, maybe unnecessary, but it will actually get the... Oh, no cancel?
Yeah, ShaDoWn grimaced a little bit there on camera.
Oh, damn.
He knew he made a mistake.
Yeah, so that was definitely a mistake. But yeah, I'm surprised actually by the lack of gases of Goblin. Now taking a 4th gas at his 3rd base, but still no gases at the natural. And so he's going to be kind of restricted to make a lot of gateway units. So he kind of puts himself in a similar position to what ShaDoWn was in the first game, just pretty low tech against a much scarier army that I don't know how exactly he is going to look to engage.
It's very similar to the first game. We once again have the race towards Disruptors up against the guy with the very much better army right now. 5, 6 Archons. I think the 6th one is forming back at home, but still 5 on the front lines. And the War Prism this time around, again, maybe surviving. Even that blink forward was favorable for ShaDoWn. Goblin knows that he cannot actually save his fourth base. So he was looking for that chip damage again. And he's going to try and hold around his 3rd. But this hold is going to be a bit sketch. No stasis trap. It did just expire. The other one's way far back. 2 3 shield batteries are going to help a lot. But he knows that he can't really just send his Zealots forward into those Archons. It'll be tough. He's going to go after the War Prism once again. He's not going to find it. That saved his life in the first game. He was unable to do it in the second. And while he does finally get it in the third, did ShaDoWn to do much damage?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's 17 probes that have gone down. It's 44 workers to 65, and ShaDoWn is taking a 4th behind this, has taken a 4th behind this. So while Goblin is going to push this away, if he can't kill ShaDoWn right now, it's going to be a very long restabilizing process for him.
That's a good way of putting it.
Right dead, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because of Disruptors, right? And there is going to be a little bit of a panic here for ShaDoWn, rightfully so, as Archon's only just finished. But yeah, with the Disruptors on the way, you could definitely argue that Goblin is still very in it, because we know there's a chance that Disruptors will do some big damage. But right, lacking in 4th base, much later on that +2, probably going to be later on that +3. There's a lot of things working against Goblin. But fortunately, he was able, at the tail end there, to get a lot of ShaDoWn's army also killed. And the stasis trap finally pops there, too. So Goblin knows he's got some time to not just have 2 Disruptors. He's probably going to have 6 or 8 before ShaDoWn's really ready to go. And if he could actually provide some pressure here, now this is dangerous because he is only at 2, right? But if he could find ShaDoWn locked into a corner and then he just adds on Disruptors, then it's much more akin to the way the first game ended, and that would be great for Goblin. That would be a really good risk if it works out. But ShaDoWn, already figuring it out, knows that this is the battle. Can he survive against the Disruptors cornered up against his 4th base?
Yeah, I think that Goblin, I don't know that Goblin wants to attack here, but he wants just this group of units. That stasis trap is so big because it actually enables him to take the fight. 2 more Disruptors have joined, and actually perfectly timed Disruptor shot from Goblin. Not allowing for the blink.
Very nicely done. I really got to respect Goblin here. This is absolutely the perfect thing to do. Again, it is a risk because he doesn't have that many Disruptors. Almost just lost one there too, but did not. But it had to be done. He had to kind of puff up his feathers so that his actual muscle mass did grow over time. His Disruptor count grew, right? But initially when he was at 2, even at 4 here, it is a dangerous game to play. 6 though, that is going to be a kind of comfortable number to just consistently throw out Disruptors. And then the question becomes, does ShaDoWn ever get a concave? Does he ever get a surround? Does he ever mitigate the Disruptor damage, knowing he's going to take at least 1 to the face?
Yeah, now it's becoming difficult even to attack into these Disruptors. And Goblin's looking for some nasty shots here. Not going to find them as the Observer of ShaDoWn still at the front. And yeah, with those Disruptors earlier, also, he was kind of playing off of that catch in the first game where they were completely off position. And he was trying to bait into the second stasis trap that he had Goblin. And if those Stalkers actually blink a little bit further forward or they walk a little bit further forward for the Disruptor shot, then maybe Goblin gets another one of those really nicely timed Disruptor shots off of the help of that stasis, and then he is pretty much just all the way back in it. And I mean, as I say that, he is very much in a stable position at this point. It feels like, if he can hold.
I don't think his recall was quite good enough. Now charge lots are coming up on the top left. He did move his Disruptors over to the right side. Plus, he had the stasis trap to kind of fall back to. So Goblin really making some very tough decisions in really good ways, especially as ShaDoWn also might have been, multitasking a bit too much. Got a Disruptor to the face. But yeah, the top left, I mentioned it. The recall wasn't big enough. And the charge reinforcements I don't think were big enough, but it doesn't go down. If he could actually save that, maybe he can bring the comeback.
Yeah, there's no shield battery here, and all of his units went away to try and save that base. So that is the problem for Goblin, is he's going to lose his natural base in this altercation. And now ShaDoWn's going to continue to secure himself a little bit more of a lead, as one Death Nexus is difficult to work with. Still, with the core of those Disruptors, it's going to be difficult for ShaDoWn to outright close the game. Not sure if he wants to overextend again and lose this army, or just play off of his economic lead from this point on.
He's going to try and stick around. Oh, that is playing with fire. Oh, yeah, my God, that is playing with fire. That was not the move. That just lost him all of the momentum. And in fact, it lost him so much that I think Goblin, once again, can go on the offensive.
Yeah.
His army accompanying the Disruptors isn't that large, but we know for a fact that ShaDoWn also no longer has a large army.
85 army supply versus 36. So yeah, ShaDoWn does not have much of anything. That was not the place to stick around. You already did all the damage. In my opinion, I think it's just time to get back and try to stabilize. If your opponent moves out again, look for those counter pokes and try to avoid this very scary army of goblins. So ShaDoWn's gonna have to maybe recall those probes out because they otherwise have no escape. And I don't like him even trying to defend here. This might be a goblin win at this point, which is crazy to think about. If ShaDoWn looks to take this engagement, he might just be, I mean, he might just be dead, right? It's looking pretty bad for him now.
It really is looking terrible. You know, ShaDoWn's on his original 3 bases that are getting mined out. Goblin was somehow left alive with one of the freshest bases in the game. And I think ShaDoWn, not only does he realize he cannot just defend against Disruptors, we see how that goes, it goes poorly, that he also should have probably killed that base. He goes after it, but Goblin, quick to the thinking here, where'd the army go? Of course it went to the left, and his Xel'Naga was able to see it too. So that Disruptor recall was perfectly timed. And it must be so tempting for ShaDoWn to just tap the Nexus. Just tap it, you know, but it's already too late. That Nexus has already given Goblin the boost of economy he needed to add too many stalkers to this game. ShaDoWn, yeah, I think he kind of threw it there. I don't think he realized that it was still a very, very nice edge game when he continued to aggress onto Goblin's side of the map.
Yeah, now it's going to be tempting to tap the F10 button and just, you know, GG, I guess, first, but yeah, it's looking pretty much impossible for him to hold. Goblin, with all the power here, is gonna push on forward. And yeah, I mean, a few moments that were crazy bad for ShaDoWn, that it was mostly in control for the majority of this game. I mean, he had so many leads that he gave away to Goblin, and it has been the theme of this whole series, and it's made it exciting and fun. But ShaDoWn has to be feeling pretty crappy after this. He is gonna GG out. He is gonna shake his head. He knows